Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Retro Wrestling Review Series, Season 4, Episode 7. I believe it's 7. Let me double check. I'm editing 6 now, so I think this would be 7. Let me just double check real quick. Yes, because the recent one I have up is 5, and 6 is I'm working on editing right now. So, yeah, this is Episode 7. And now I'm going to be reviewing the 1993 Royal Rumble. I'm probably not going to review it all. I plan on reviewing it all today, but I'm probably not going to review it all, in one sitting. I'm probably going to go to school and maybe take some time while I'm at school to sit down and watch it and review it, and then probably come back here and review it. So I got to do a show. I have some stuff to do at school tomorrow too, from 2 to 4. So I'm not going to be able to do it at those times. So I'm going to try to get this uploaded. I'm only going to try to start uploading a crap load of these now, just so that way I can at least catch up. I'm going to try to catch up before Sunday. Depends on what I'm doing. So let's talk about this Royal Rumble. So now these Royal Rumbles I think are going to get pretty interesting because now this is at the time where the WWF was kind of having its struggles. From 93, you could say maybe from maybe 96, early 97, they were kind of struggling a little bit. I wouldn't maybe say as much maybe as 93, but they were definitely starting to struggle a little bit because they were losing a lot of the top stars that they had. In the previous episodes, like from the Hogan era, like they lost. I believe at this time they had lost the Ultimate Warrior again. They had lost him a few times, and they lost him again. They lost, Greg the Hammer Valentine. They lost. I don't think the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase was really much of a wrestling role anymore. I'm just kind of going off the top of my head. Jake the Snake Roberts, I think, was gone. Macho Man Randy Savage wasn't really gone, but he wasn't as much. He really wasn't much of a player for that company anymore. I'm talking like it's a sport, but I'm talking like it's actually like a. But he really wasn't much of a. He was mainly just doing commentary and things like that. I think what was gone at this time. Ric Flair was out the door. He wanted to be out of the. I think he wanted to go back to WCW. There's a lot of guys that were gone. I mean, let me kind of look this up. I have the 93 like background information of it. I can't really like put it really set it to my mindset. Who really was gone. But there was a lot of stars pretty much that. Let me just put it this way: there was a lot of stars that had left the company at this time. So the WWF was struggling. So these shows I think aren't going to be very good. But I haven't seen these shows yet, so I could be wrong. Some of them may be better than others. Some of them may be worse. Some of them are probably going to be god awful. It's going to be a pretty boring time to be doing these shows, I think. It's gonna be interesting though. It's kind of nice to watch the bad shows sometimes. To kind of say, maybe because people are trash on nowadays product. Maybe if I watched a bad back then, maybe it wouldn't be. Maybe now wouldn't seem as bad. I guess. So we're gonna have to wait and see. But yeah. I hope you guys enjoy this video. I'm gonna do the same thing I've been doing. But yeah, I'm gonna watch the pre-show and then I'm gonna watch the real show itself. Okay, so we had the pre-show for the 1993 Royal Rumble match, and we had the host, Sean Mooney, and it talks about the build-up for the WWF Championship match, and the build-up was Bret the Hitman Hart defending his title against Razor Ramon. And the reason this match was happening was because Bret Hart had busted his ass for years in the WWF. He had held he was in the tag team division, had held a ton of tag team championships. He was in the he then broke out on his own, became a mid-card champion. He was a two-time intercontinental champion. But then he finally had won the big one. He finally won the WWF Championship from Ric Flair. And at the time, this was a huge deal because this was the first time they really had a wrestler that was based on wrestling, and he wasn't a muscle guy. You could technically maybe say Ric Flair wasn't too much like that because Ric Flair wasn't a complete muscular guy, but Ric Flair was already huge anyways. Bret Hart was a complete new star. Like Bret Hart was the type of champion that the new type of wrestling fans could relate to. This was kind of the time where the WWF was changing from having all the muscle guys like the Hulk Hogan's, the Ultimate Warriors, the Macho Man Randy Savages, even though he was pretty agile himself, but all the big guys in the main event, and they moved on to a guy like Bret the Hitman Hart, where it was about the wrestling ability, and I thought that was, great. So Bret the Hitman Hart had carried that WWF Championship, and he defended it against everybody. He took out all comers, and then finally, during a interview segment, he was attacked by the Nature Boy Ric Flair and Razor Ramon. Now, Razor Ramon was new to the company. He had come into the company in late 1992, and he becomes a huge star later on in his career. But he was a newcomer. He was originally aligned with the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and they decided to have the match. Razor Ramon was destroying everybody, and he actually has a really good gimmick. He always goes out into restaurants and talks about how he's not paying the bill because he's a big superstar and he's a bad guy. He can do whatever he wants. And Razor Ramon was a new star as well in the main event scene. And originally, it actually says on Wikipedia that the Ultimate Warrior was supposed to be in this spot facing Bret the Hitman Hart for the title, but since he left the company in late 1992, Razor Ramon took his spot. This feud just kept escalating until where in a backstage segment, Razor Ramon attacked the Rocket, which everybody knows was Owen Hart, who in real life was Bret the Hitman Hart's brother. So that intensified the feud even more. And Bret the Hitman Hart wanted to fight Razor Ramon. And Razor Ramon comes on the screen and says that he doesn't fight on his terms. He fights on his own terms. And Bret the Hitman Hart said he's going to kick his ass at the Royal Rumble. So overall, not the best feud ever, but a decent feud. And a nice change for a WWF Championship match. Then we have the build-up, and then it shows like a nice little music video too for Bret Hart. Talking about his showing everything that he's ever done in his career. And then we have the build-up for the Intercontinental Championship match. It's between Intercontinental Champion Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. Now this feud obviously goes back years. Obviously they had come in together as the tag team known as the Walkers, and they were a tag team for 7 years in the WWF. And they were a really popular tag team. They clicked so well. But then they were finally starting to have dissension, and they tried to fix it. There was a segment where they went on the Barber Shop show, which was hosted by Brutus the Barber Beefcake, and we thought they had fixed everything. Shawn Michaels reaches out his hand to Marty Jannetty. Marty Jannetty talks about how they can take each other to the top, and we can make this thing work, and we think that everything's going to work out. But then Shawn Michaels super kicks Marty Jannetty, and he ended up turning on, and it's that famous segment where Shawn Michaels turns on Marty Jannetty, and he throws him through the glass window, and Marty Jannetty wasn't seen for months. And while Marty Jannetty was gone, Shawn Michaels became a singles competitor and wrestled by himself. He ended up winning the on an episode of WWE Superstars of Wrestling on October 31st, 1992. Marty Jannetty had returned after months of absence, and he wanted to get revenge on Shawn Michaels. So he beat the crap out of him, and at the time he was with Shawn Michaels had finally gotten the manager services of Sensational Sherry, and Marty Jannetty goes to hit Shawn Michaels off the head with the mirror, kind of to get revenge on him for Michaels throwing him through the glass window. But Shawn Michaels pulls Sherry in between it, and he accidentally hits Sherry, and Michaels takes off running. I thought that was great, and but also as this had happened, Shawn Michaels had won the Intercontinental Championship from the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith on October 27th, 1992. So then they had this match set up for the Royal Rumble, but for the Intercontinental Championship between Michaels and Jannetty. But the big question is what role was Sensational Sherry going to play in this? Because she had announced that she was going to be in the corner of one of these men, but we didn't know which one. Which kind of adds to the feud. So then we have a backstage segment. Shawn Michaels talks about how he had been carrying Marty Jannetty for years when he was teaming with him, and he said that now he has to fly solo. But tonight people are going to be carrying you out in a stretcher, and he talks about how Sensational Sherry isn't going to want to join up with you because she's not going to want to join up with a guy that tries to injure her by taking her out with a mirror. And then Marty Jannetty's backstage, and he said that he plans on getting revenge on Shawn Michaels and taking the Intercontinental Championship from him. I thought they both cut pretty good promos. And another story going into this match was this was also at the time where Mr. Perfect had his babyface run, and he was feuding with the Nature Boy Ric Flair. And because they had to turn Mr. Perfect face because Ultimate Warrior had left the company. And Mr. Perfect and Ric Flair feuded. It made sense because Mr. Perfect and Ric Flair were in alliance since pretty much the Nature Boy Ric Flair had joined the WWF. And this kind of broke them apart. And they had had a little bit of an altercation in the match at Survivor Series and the tag team match between Mr. Perfect and Macho Man Randy Savage versus the Nature Boy Ric Flair and Razor Ramon. So overall, that was kind of cool. And they were kind of setting up something with Mr. Perfect. But Bobby the Brain Heenan announced that there's going to be a Narcissist coming into the WWF. So this is going to be the debut of that. So Bobby the Brain Heenan announces hyping up his Narcissist. And they also announced other matches on the show. They announced that there's the Big Boss Man is going to be taking on Bam Bam Bigelow, and they also announced a tag team match on the show. They announced it's going to be the Steiner Brothers versus the Beverly Brothers, and the Steiner Brothers consist of the Steiner Brothers. I actually have to find this part. The Steiner brothers had consisted of Rick and Scott Steiner, and the Beverly brothers had consisted of Blue and Blake Beverly. And obviously, this was setting up a feud. This was the feud to decide who the better brother tag team was, which is a solid feud. And I actually kind of can't wait to see this match. And I can't wait to see this show. Actually, it looks like actually a solid show. Not as good as like the Rumbles from before, but this looks like a solid show. And obviously, we have the Rumble match itself, and this is the first time ever in WWF history. Well, actually, in WWE history, where they added the stipulation where if you won the Royal Rumble match, you would get a WWF Championship match or WWE Championship match at WrestleMania. But it was only one time. Since there was only one championship at the time, you only fought for the WWF Championship. And overall, you have a lot of superstars that could possibly in it. And you have a lot of feuds going on. Like you have The Undertaker, who is feuding with the manager, Harvey Whippleman. And Kamala was in there, and an Undertaker had just blew off his feud with him. You have, who else was feuding? Obviously, the Mr. Perfect, Nature Boy Ric Flair feud. They have the whole Virgil and the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, who at the time was one half of the WWF Tag Team Champions. And they were feuding because of the whole thing that they had going on. They weren't really feuding at the time, but they had a story from when Virgil had turned on him, and they had those series of matches in 1992. Obviously, you have the history behind Tito Santana and the model Rick Martel because of what happened with them when they were a tag team as Strike Force. What else did you have going into this show? No, that's about it. And obviously, you had the questioning. You had Ric Flair in the match, and Ric Flair wasn't going to be staying with the company much longer, like I said in the beginning of this video, because he wanted to go back over to WCW, and because he felt like his career was going to be more successful. So that's kind of what the Mr. Perfect Nature Boy Ric Flair feud was used for. So yeah, overall a pretty well built show. But now let's actually watch the show itself. Okay, so we had the real show itself. We had Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain Heenan on commentary. And I didn't talk about this too much in the 1992 review, but I think that this is probably the greatest commentary pair-up in, I don't know about wrestling history, but definitely in WWE history. I thought Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain Heenan, actually, now that I think about it, maybe the second greatest, but definitely a great commentary team. I think they had great chemistry together. You can definitely feel that they definitely not had that great chemistry because they were really such good friends outside the business, and normally that's why people get along on commentary so well. And obviously too, it helps when you call matches. The people on commentary play the roles they're supposed to play. Bobby the Brain Heenan was the great heel commentator, and he kept putting that over. And Gorilla Monsoon was the great babyface commentator. So I thought it was really good. And the first match on the show, it was a tag team match. It was the Beverly Brothers versus the Steiner Brothers. Overall, I thought this was a solid tag team match. It really wasn't like a great tag team match or even a good tag team match, but it was a solid tag team match. It was okay. It was, I thought, solid. I thought it definitely delivered. And the Steiner Brothers dominate the first half of the matchup. And then eventually the Beverly Brothers get the heat on Scott Steiner's. They hit backbreakers. They hit a backbreaker on him. One of the Beverly Brothers choked Scott Steiner with the tag rope, which I thought was kind of a cool spot behind the referee's back too, so he doesn't get disqualified. And then eventually Rick Steiner gets the hawk tag. He starts going off on everybody, and eventually he tags it back Scott Steiner back in, and they try to win with an underhook power bomb but one of the Beverly Brothers breaks up the pinfall in time, and Rick Steiner comes in and they fight, and Rick Steiner and that Beverly Brother fight to the outside, and the Beverly Brothers eventually try to hit like a version of the heart attack of the Doomsday Device coming off the top rope, but Scott Steiner's able to roll up one of the Beverly Brothers, and when the other one tries to go off the top rope, he ends up missing. But they try to say too that he wasn't close enough either. They were too far away for him to even land the moves. But the Beverly Brother ends up kicking out. Then eventually the Steiner Brothers win when Scott Steiner hits the Frankensteiner on one of the Beverly Brothers for the win. And the Steiner Brothers go over. But like I said, I thought this was a solid tag team match. Okay, so next match was a Intercontinental Championship match. Intercontinental Champion Shawn Michaels versus Marty Jannetty. And before the match, they played a little video package. And it was Mean Gene Okerlund kind of directing it. And obviously the video package don't look like as great as they do now, but I still thought it looked good. But you gotta remember they didn't have the technology then that they did now. But I still thought it looked good, told the story. But I'm not going to tell what the story is because I did it earlier in the video. So we had the match, and Sensational Sherry comes out and she's kind of conflicted about whose corner to go in. And Marty Jannetty beats the crap out of Shawn Michaels. And I thought this was great because he wants to get revenge for Shawn Michaels turning on him, and he beats the crap out of him. Irish whips him, and Shawn Michaels lands really awkwardly out of the ring. And then Marty Jannetty clotheslines him out of the ring. He ends up hitting a dive on the outside, and then he ends up hitting a right hand from the apron, and then he goes to go off the top rope and dive on the outside, but Shawn Michaels catches him into a right hand, and then he starts to target the he picks up he rams Marty Jannetty's shoulder first into the steel post, and he starts to target the injured shoulder of Marty Jannetty. He just really dominates him. I thought it looked great. Then eventually Marty Jannetty starts to make a comeback, and he beats the crap out of Shawn Michaels. There was one spot where Shawn Michaels was about to suplex Marty Jannetty in the ring, but then Marty Jannetty hit a suplex to Shawn Michaels and drove him outside the ring. I thought that looked sick. And then behind the referee's back, Sensational Sherry gets in Shawn Michaels' face, and at this point she really wasn't cheering or booing for anybody, but she was concerned for both guys. But then she slaps the dog shit out of Shawn Michaels, and Marty Jannetty hits a back suplex on Shawn Michaels, nearly gets the victory, but Shawn Michaels is able to kick out. And then Marty Jannetty hits a ton of roll-ups on Shawn Michaels, but he's able to kick out of all of them. He eventually hits a slingshot under Shawn Michaels and rolls him up again, but Shawn Michaels kicks out to get out of that. And Shawn Michaels tries to go for a super kick. Marty Jannetty ducks. Jannetty hits one of his own. Michaels kicks out of that. And then eventually the referee takes a bump, and Sensational Sherry, Marty Jannetty's holding Shawn Michaels back so Sensational Sherry can hit him in the head with one of her high heels, but she misses and ends up accidentally hitting Marty Jannetty, and then Shawn Michaels gets in his face, and she's all distraught and scared about it. And then eventually Shawn Michaels hits the super kick, and the referee comes to, makes the count, gets the victory, and Shawn Michaels retains his Intercontinental Championship. And we see Sensational Sherry run backstage. He's all upset about this, and then Shawn Michaels runs backstage, and Marty Jannetty chases after him, and Mean Gene Okerlund is trying to calm Sensational Sherry down, but then Shawn Michaels gets in the face and says, "I thought you loved me. What was that?" And then Marty Jannetty attacks Shawn Michaels, and Michaels and Jannetty stop brawling, and it has to be broken up by officials, and that was it. Overall, I thought this was all fantastic stuff. I thought the Intercontinental Championship match was a 5-star match. I thought it was just really fantastic, and it was a match that had story behind it. It was a match that I thought I cared about. It was a match that in the win was really good too, and it just told a story. And then I like that they continued to intensify the feud even further by having the backstage segment afterwards. So overall, I thought this was fantastic stuff. Okay, so the next match was Bam Bam Bigelow versus Big Boss Man, and this match was boring. I really didn't care about it all that much. I was like, you know what, this match could be good because they're both very agile, big men, but it really wasn't that good. It was boring. Bam Bam Bigelow, I thought was a solid talent. He was one of those big men that could do all those high impact moves. Same thing with the Big Boss Man, and he also had a gimmick I really liked and a theme song I cared about and everything. But these guys just didn't click in the win, I thought. Bam Bam Bigelow I thought was really weird at this time because he had that weird theme song, Bam, Bam. And, it was just bad, and I didn't get what his whole shtick was supposed to be. And, Bam Bam Bigelow had been around for years, I believe. And it was kind of, time. I feel like it was time to kind of call it quits, but whatever. Match was pretty boring though. Bam Bam Bigelow attacks Big Boss Man before the match starts, and he dominates him. Then Big Boss Man beats the crap out of him, He hits a wicked big boot, and he hits a clothesline outside the ring and just beats the crap out of Bam Bam Bigelow. Then Bam Bam Bigelow throws him over the top rope, and he lands on the floor shoulder first. So Bam Bam Bigelow takes his time and methodically picks apart Big Boss Man, which was really boring because it dragged out forever. Then Big Boss Man makes his comeback. Then he goes for a crossbody, and Bam Bam Bigelow moves out of the way, and Bam Bam Bigelow hits a diving headbutt for the win, and that was it. This match was boring. It sucked. Okay, so next match was a WWF Championship match. WWF Champion Bret the Hitman Hart versus Razor Ramon. And seeing Razor Ramon come out, even though I don't necessarily think he looked like a superstar because he kind of looked like a little bit of a bum, with the way he didn't look like he ever showered really and everything. But he acted like a superstar. The way his entrance, the way he presented himself, the way he spoke, that's just probably the epitome of what a superstar should act like. And I definitely thought Razor Ramon was great in that scenario. And he was obviously, I thought good in the ring, not like great, but good. He can have solid matches, and he had a, obviously since he was working with Bret Hart, and it does take two to tango. I agree with it, but sometimes I'm not saying that Bret Hart carried Razor Ramon because that wasn't the case at all. But sometimes when you work with a great wrestler like Bret the Hitman Hart, you can get a really good match, and this was a really good WWF Championship match. Razor Ramon immediately starts punching Bret Hart in the corner, and then he Irish whips him into the other turnbuckle, goes for a high knee, but Bret Hart moves out of the way, and he ends up injuring his knee. So Bret Hart works over the knee, and Bret Hart gets him into the figure 4 leg lock, but Razor Ramon doesn't tap out, and Bret Hart continuously works over the knee. He really works it over into the steel post. And then eventually, Bret Hart, Razor Ramon Irish whips Bret Hart and rams him ribs first right into the steel post. I thought that looked sick. And then he really starts working over the ribs of Bret the Hitman Hart. He stretches Bret the Hitman Hart ribs first across the steel post. He hits 2 backbreakers on the floor, and then he rams him back first into the steel post. And Razor Ramon just really dominates Bret Hart, really works over the ribs of Bret Hart. He gets him into an abdominal stretch, and Bret Hart tries to reverse it, but Bret Hart really doesn't have a lot of energy because of the injured ribs, so he can't really hook the move fully. Well, he can't really, I shouldn't say that, but he can't really keep the move on all that long. And then eventually, Bret Hart starts to make his comeback. He hits a high cross body on Razor Ramon, hits a couple of right hands, hits a drop kick, a snap suplex, and just really starts to make his comeback. And then he tries to go for the sharpshooter onto Razor Ramon, but Razor Ramon is able to get to the ropes, and Razor Ramon kicks him in the ribs, hits a clothesline, and he goes for the Razor's Edge, but Bret Hart battles out of it with a roll-up, but Razor Ramon reverses it into a one himself, and then Bret Hart reverses a roll-up, and that roll-up into a roll-up himself, and then eventually Razor Ramon is being all cocky, and Bret Hart gets him into a bow and arrow roll-up, which looked really cool, and Razor Ramon kicks out of it, and as they're both on the ground, Bret Hart starts to lock in the sharpshooter, and he finally locks in the sharpshooter on Razor Ramon, and he has the move on, and Razor Ramon verbally submits. He doesn't tap out, but he verbally says, I give up. And Bret Hart wins and retains his WWF Championship, and overall I thought this was a really good WWF Championship match. I thought it delivered, and this was kind of like what was really good about having Bret Hart at the time as WWF champion. He was something fresh. He always had good, solid WWF championship matches. We actually saw a more technical side to the WWF championship, and I thought that was really good. And now also, too, I want to mention that since Bret Hart retained his title, that means he's going to go on to defend his title at WrestleMania against the winner of the Royal Rumble match, which I'll talk about in a couple of minutes. Okay, so next, Bobby the Brain Heenan reveals the Narcissist. Now, I really didn't go much into a backstory about it because the pre-show really didn't talk about it all that much, so I'm just going to kind of do that. So obviously, the backstory behind this match was Mr. Perfect had at Survivor Series 1992, or a little bit prior to that, had turned his back on the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and he was also in line with Bobby the Brain Heenan. He turned his back on him as well, since the Ultimate Warrior went ape shit again and left again. So they had to kind of, book themselves out of a corner. And I guess they chose to turn Mr. Perfect face, which I don't really know, it seems like a weird theory, but I think he's so great that he can actually pull it off. So, and he had never been face before. He was in the company for years. This was his first face run, so I thought it made sense. So Mr. Perfect had been announcing for the past 4 weeks that he was going to find that he was going to reveal who the Narcissist was. The Narcissist was set to take out Mr. Perfect, and it is revealed that the Narcissist was Lex Luger. And if you don't know who Lex Luger is, originally he was in WCW, and he was a former WCW champion, and he also competed. I don't even know. He also joined Vince McMahon's World Bodybuilding Federation, but when that went under, Vince McMahon had decided to sign Lex Luger to a contract, so this is kind of what they did with him. They reveal him. I'm not really going to talk about the segment because as I explained this stuff, that's what kind of the segment was all about. And he starts posing, and really this was supposed to get some woman to get wet and everything. It's kind of what it was for, and it was supposed to make it look like how muscular and, how muscular he was, and they did it, and how perfect he was, and they kind of talk about that. Lex Luger said that he's going to be the most dominant force in the WWF, and he said that he's even better than perfect, and says that everybody in the back, everybody in the crowd is impressed by me, and he says that when he gets his hands on Mr. Perfect, if he has the guts to face him one-on-one, he's going to destroy him. That's about it. I really didn't care much for this. I just thought it came off bad. And I didn't really think the debut was all that impressive. It was just kind of him posing for a while, and obviously he was the big heel along with Bobby the Brain Heenan, but I just didn't think it worked. He was the Narcissist Lex Luger. I just didn't think that gimmick really worked for him, so I really didn't care much for this segment. Okay, so next, Julius Caesar and Cleopatra come out, and no, these weren't the real Julius Caesar and Cleopatra. I'm assuming everyone probably already knows that. These were just people dressed up as them because WrestleMania 9 was in the Coliseum, I believe they called it. So they were doing a very Rome theme for it, which I'll get to that when I review that show. And, they pretty much announced the proclamation. This was pretty much to advertise WrestleMania 9, and they kind of and they also kind of were there to hype up the Royal Rumble, and they say let the games begin and stuff, and they do it like very royally. They stick to the gimmick. I thought overall it was okay. Nothing to complain about really. I thought they were advertising WrestleMania 9, so I thought they did a good job in that aspect. Okay, so now we have the Royal Rumble match for a WWF Championship match at WrestleMania. The first time ever in history that this was a thing, and it would continue for years. I thought it was a great concept, and it still is a great concept. makes the Royal Rumble really feel big. It was already big anyways, but this really made the Royal Rumble feel huge. And we start off with the first two competitors. Number 1 is the Nature Boy Ric Flair, which I thought made sense since he had won it at number 3. Why not try to go to the distance with it? And number 2 was Bob Backlund, which was really cool to see Bob Backlund. Bob Backlund had been in the had been in the WWF when it was the WWWF, and he was the champion for 5 years. And having him in the Rumble match was really cool at his age. And he actually lasted a long time, too. It was a pretty long time. Yeah. And he actually ended up breaking the longevity record. They didn't even talk about it. He broke the Nature Boy Ric Flair's longevity record. He lasted an hour, 1 minute, and 10 seconds in the Royal Rumble match, which is really impressive. But he pretty much beats the crap out of Ric Flair. The Nature Boy Ric Flair fights back with a few chops, and then number 3 comes out. It's Papa Shango, and Papa Shango doesn't really last very long. He immediately gets eliminated by Bob Backlund and Ric Flair, and then the Nature Boy Ric Flair tries to eliminate Bob Backlund, but Bob Backlund's able to hang on. And then number 4 was the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, and Flair and the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, who was one half of the. By the way, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, was one half of the WWF Tag Team Champions and one half of the Tag Team Money Incorporated. But him and the $1 Million Man, the Nature Boy Ric Flair and the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, beat down Bob Backlund and pretty much beat the crap out of him. They work together to try to eliminate him, but they are unsuccessful. And then number 5 was Brian Knobbs. He actually ends up fighting off the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, and the Nature Boy Ric Flair, because at the time Brian Knobbs, along as his partner who was in the Nasty Boys, both members of the Nasty Boys were feuding with Money Incorporated for the WWF Tag Team Championships. And then number 6 was Virgil. I thought he did pretty good in the Rumble. Number 7 was Jerry the King Lawler. And Jerry the King Lawler actually did pretty well in this match. He actually beats the crap out of Ric Flair. And it gets to the point where Ric Flair goes underneath the bottom rope to try to escape. And number 8 was Max Moon. Wow. Max Moon. This is kind of one of those examples where they started to get really bad gimmicks in these times, because you just hear it, Max Moon. He was literally from the moon. Doesn't make any sense. Number 9 was I don't know how to say this name, but Janikru Tinru. Number 10 was Mr. Perfect, and he immediately comes out and beats the crap out of Ric Flair, because at the time him and Flair were feuding, and they were having a match on Monday Night Raw. The loser was going to leave the WWF, and he beats the crap out of Ric Flair. Number 11 was Skinner. I don't really like Skinner all that much. He is bad. Then eventually Mr. Perfect beats the crap out of Ric Flair. The Nature Boy Ric Flair tries to eliminate it, but Perfect's able to hang on. And then Mr. Perfect hits a clothesline and eliminates Ric Flair. And before that, Jerry the King Lawler had eliminated Max Moon, so I forgot to mention that. So then Mr. Perfect hits a drop kick on Skinner and eliminates him. And then what else? Mr. Perfect. Let me just make sure and then number 12 was Coco Beware. Number 13 was Samu with Appo inside. And then number 14 was the Berserker. And Mr. Perfect ends up eliminating Jerry the King Lawler. And then he gets thrown over the top by the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. And Coco Beware and the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, are trying to eliminate him, but he keeps staying in. And Jerry the King Lawler then swoops in, and they're all trying to eliminate Mr. Perfect, but they just can't do it. But then eventually they finally get Mr. Perfect out, which obviously meant that Jerry the King Lawler screwed him out of the Royal Rumble match. So Mr. Perfect and Jerry the King Lawler fight to the back. I thought this was awesome. And number 14 was the Berserker, and number 15 was Undertaker with Paul Bearer inside, and the Berserker looked really cool, strong in this match. He actually looked, I thought, pretty cool. I'm not a huge fan of his character though, but I thought he looked pretty strong. During the whole chaos when Coco Beware, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, and Jerry the King Lawler were eliminating Mr. Perfect, the Berserker ended up eliminating Virgil, and then the Berserker throws Bob Backlund through the ropes, so he's not eliminated since he didn't go over the ropes. And he goes outside the ring, just through the ropes as well. And he beats the crap out of Bob Backlund, hits him with a chair, body slams him on the floor. So I thought this part of the Rumble match was really good. And then the Undertaker comes in, he cleans house, he eliminates Samu, he eliminates Janigro Tinru. And then he chokes the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, in the corner. And then number 16 comes in. It's Terrific Terry Taylor. He didn't last long at all in this match. He ended up getting eliminated by the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. The $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, ended up eliminating both Terrific Terry Taylor and Coco Beware at the same time. And Coco Beware at this time was in the tag team known as High Energy. And afterwards, Undertaker lays him out with a choke slam, clotheslines the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, over the top rope and eliminates him. And then it's just right now down to the Undertaker and the Berserker. And then we see this big guy come out with Harvey Whippleman, considering the fact since Undertaker was feuding with him kind of at the time, because Undertaker had destroyed Kamala and Harvey Whippleman had sworn revenge. And this part was terrible. So, Undertaker's still fighting with the Berserker. He eliminates the Berserker, and then he sees this giant man. He's probably really like 8 foot tall. And this man gets in the ring, and him and Undertaker have a stare down. And Undertaker goes to take a shot. This guy beats the crap out of the Undertaker. He clotheslines him over the top rope, so that means Undertaker's eliminated. Beats the crap out of him on the outside, and he manhandles the Undertaker like a child. And this is the first time in history that the Undertaker had been manhandled like this. He Irish whips some knees first into the steps, throws him back into the ring. And as this attack is happening, people are making their entrances. Number 17 was Damien Demento, but he doesn't want to get in the ring and face off with this guy. And then number 18 was Owen Schweister. And this attack, by the way, was terrible. It did not look good at all. And this giant man continually attacks the Undertaker, body slams him. He puts him against the steel post and just wags his leg against the post. And eventually, finally, officials pull him off, and he ends up backing off. And it was just terrible. This guy, the way he had, did not look very, very intimidating. The way he attacked him didn't look good. And this was terrible. And if you don't know who this is, by the way, this was Giant Gonzalez, and this was bad. And this pretty much brought down the Royal Rumble match. And what was so goofy about this was throughout for about maybe 5 minutes of the match, Undertaker was just thrown up against the steel post, and then Paul Bearer finally has to come out and revive the Undertaker, and he finally comes to, but he's all injured and stuff, and it was bad. And everyone has, and I respect, and I have all this respect in the world for the Undertaker, because he's willing to work with a guy like this, and he had to put up with this crap. It was terrible. But then, after Giant Gonzalez leaves, the match kind of continues, and number 19 was Tatanka. Number 20 was Jerry Sags, and the Rumble really didn't go anywhere. This kind of brought down the Rumble bad. Like, this Rumble was bad after this part. Number 21 was Typhoon. And number 22 was Fatu with Appa. And everyone's just kind of not really doing much. They're just kind of stomping away at each other. Number 23 was Earthquake. This kind of picked up a little bit. Earthquake immediately goes right after Typhoon, which is a tag team partner in the Natural Disasters. And they actually had a good little exchange, but eventually Earthquake finally eliminates them, which I thought was cool. And Earthquake had turned babyface by this point. Number 24 was the Caribbean champion Carlos Colon, which was cool that they had him in this match. And he looked pretty strong. He eliminated Damien Demento, which I thought was nice. I think that was the next elimination. Number 25 was El Matador Tito Santana. Number 26 was the model Rick Martel. Number 27 was Yokozuna with Mr. Fuji inside. Yokozuna looked actually pretty dominant. He actually eliminates a lot of guys. He eliminates first Bob Backlund before he had come out eliminates Fatu. Earthquake eliminates Erwin L. Schweister. And then when Yokozuna come out, he immediately eliminates Tatanka, Carlos Colon, and then he has a little bit of a face-off with Earthquake. And during Earthquake entrance, the next entry comes in, and it's the Rocket. And Earthquake and Yokozuna too was accompanied by Mr. Fuji, and he had never been knocked off his feet. And Earthquake avalanches him in the corner, but he still doesn't get knocked off his feet. And eventually, Yokozuna belly-to-bellies Earthquake out of the ring and eliminates him, which was impressive. And the match continues. Number 29 was the Repo Man, and Yokozuna eliminates the Rocket, which was okay, I guess. Oh, sorry, I messed that up. Yokozuna actually eliminates El Matador Tito Santana, my bad. And then the Rocket hits a drop kick on Jerry Sags, eliminates him. And then number 29 was Repo Man. Then number 30 was the Macho Man Randy Savage, and he comes out like a house on fire. And Yokozuna eliminates the Rocket. Macho Man Randy Savage eliminates the Repo Man. And then it's down to Bob Backlund eliminates the Model Milk Martel. And then it's down to the final four. Actually, that was the final four. So then it's down to the final four. The Model Rick Martel, Bob Backlund, which was impressive that he lasted as long as he did. I thought they gave him a great spot. I thought he was like the MVP of this match. Yokozuna and Macho Man Randy Savage. And Bob Backlund eliminates the Model Rick Martel. And then he has a little face-off with Yokozuna. He drop kicks him, but then eventually Yokozuna eliminates him. And then it's down to Yokozuna and Macho Man Randy Savage. Macho Man Randy Savage does the best he can to fight him off. He hits a couple of axe handles on him. And then eventually Yokozuna destroys him, hits a belly-to-belly, hits a leg drop, hits an avalanche in the corner. Then he goes for a... and he just pretty much methodically picks apart Macho Man Randy Savage. And then he goes to hit the avalanche again. Macho Man Randy Savage moves out of the way, goes up to the top rope, delivers the elbow, and he tries to pin him, not knowing it's a Rumble match. And then Yokozuna kicks out, and he ends up getting, and he kicks him, and he ends up kicking out with such authority. He ends up knocking Macho Man Randy Savage over the top rope, and Yokozuna ends up winning the Royal Rumble match. And afterwards, he leaves with Julius Caesar and afterwards he ends up leaving with Julius Caesar and I forget her name now off the top of my head. Just give me a second. He leaves with Julius Caesar, and I can't look it up and Cleopatra, I think. Yeah, Cleopatra. And the show, then it shows the credits of the show, and then afterwards Bret the Hitman Hart and Yokozuna have a face-off with each other, and that was the end of the show. Overall, the Rumble match, I didn't care for. I thought it was really boring. This was probably the worst Rumble match that I've gone back and watched and seen. I don't know if it might be the worst Rumble match I've ever seen. It had a lot of guys I didn't care about, like Typhoon, um, Damien Demento. Who else did I not care for? Obviously Repo Man. I never cared for that character. I also didn't care for Skinner. Maybe Samuel. I'm not really. He's an okay. Max Moon. Wow. And it has this spot where Giant Gonzalez debuts, and he pretty much ruined the whole match because and like destroys the Undertaker. That was bad. And Yokozuna winning, was okay, I guess, but like, I was fine with him winning. It made sense. They were building him as this dominant monster, and it made sense to have him win this match. So yeah, that was the Rumble match. I just thought overall it was pretty boring. It really was actually an okay Rumble up until the Giant Gonzalez stuff, but I don't think the Rumble ever really truly got going either, because it had some nice spots where you marked out, but a lot of the match is really boring. Nothing happens a lot, so I personally thought this Royal Rumble match was boring. Alright, so now let me say where the WWF went after this show. So obviously this match led to Bret the Hitman Hart defending his WWF Championship against Yokozuna. And this was the first time ever they had that stipulation with the WrestleMania thing. And yeah, it was it was interesting. Yokozuna then went on to become champion, and he was the first superstar to ever go on and win the title at WrestleMania. After winning the Royal Rumble match, and it validated that. But I want to talk about what happens in more detail when I review WrestleMania 9. And then it also led to this also led to Shawn Michaels continuing his feud with Sensational Sherry, where he came out with a different manager at WrestleMania, and then eventually it continued the Marty Jannetty Shawn Michaels feud when Marty Jannetty beat him for the Intercontinental Championship on an episode of Raw, and then Michaels won the final match and he ended up winning the feud. What else? Obviously this led to Mr. Perfect versus Ric Flair, and the loser leaves WWF match where Ric Flair would end up losing, and he ended up leaving the WWF and he joined WCW. And then Mr. Perfect would go on a feud with Lex Luger going into WrestleMania 9. Anything else important? This led to Undertaker versus Giant Gonzalez at WrestleMania, which was bad, but I'll talk about that in a different video. It started their feud, and this was the end of the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase Virgil feud. They never mentioned it anymore after this, really. And after this match, the Natural Disasters stopped teaming up together, and Earthquake ended up getting released, and he left to go to Japan. Anything else did this? I guess that's about it. Not really a lot of great stuff it led to. It led to some great matches with Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty for the Intercontinental Championship. Led to a pretty weird feud between Mr. Perfect and Lex Luger. And obviously it led to an okay match between Bret the Hitman Hart and Yokozuna. So, this Royal Rumble didn't really go anywhere good. Okay, so overall I thought this Royal Rumble was a pretty average show. I was originally going to come on here and say it was okay, because I actually was kind of somewhat enjoying it. There's some things I like, some things I dislike. This is definitely the worst one I've gone back and watched. Let me kind of go through the show again. So I thought the opening tag team match was solid. I thought the Intercontinental Championship match was fantastic. That was probably the match of the night. And I want to mention too, I thought the pre-show was pretty good itself. Bam Bam Bigelow versus Big Boss Man was boring. Razor Ramon versus Bret the Hitman Hart for the title. I thought was a really good match. The Narcissist reveal was lame, and the Royal Rumble itself I thought was um, pretty lame. So I really did. So I'm gonna say that this was an average show because of the usually when the Rumble match isn't good, and that's the match that was really selling the show. That's not a good thing. Um, and it just had a lot of low moments on this show, and it didn't really feel special. Um, the only the yeah, but you know but it does have some good stuff on it. But you really don't need to go back and check this one out because it's just an average show. It's not that great. Um, but if you watched it, you wouldn't really feel like you completely wasted your time. The commentary is even great on this show. Um, but you know, it also doesn't really go anywhere good. You know, this is like I said around the time when the WWF was in a bad state. So as I do these next few reviews, I'm gonna probably see that. But that's pretty much. But yeah, overall, I thought this was a average show. Alright, that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and my other channels. And I don't know if I'm going to actually end up finishing the Royal Rumble review series. I thought I could at least this weekend. I may still be able to, but it's just going to be extremely difficult just because I have to do homework. And it's just going to be a little more difficult than I thought. So I'm going to try to, though. If I can't finish it, I at least want to try to get up to a certain point, and then what I want to do is I'll stop, and I'll try to do it again, and I'll try to finish them at least in the future. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and that's pretty much it, guys. I'll talk to you later.